Hello, church family. It's 2 Minute Tuesday. Back when I lived in Grand Rapids, I had a best friend. And this best friend and I had a weekly ritual. Every Saturday morning at 6:30, we'd go to a local Starbucks. We'd go to the counter and order our coffee. We'd sit down at the same table, and we'd have a conversation that followed the same basic progression. We'd start by catching up on the past week. We'd ask about each other's spouses and children. We'd talk about work. And then we'd go a little deeper. We'd talk about where we were at emotionally and spiritually. We'd share our faith and our hopes and our plans for the future. One of the things that I missed most when I moved to Detroit was this weekly ritual, which might lead you to ask, well, why didn't I just keep the ritual going? Why don't I continue to show up at Starbucks at 6:30 on a Saturday morning? You already know the answer to that question. The reason is because it's not really about the ritual, it's about the relationship. The ritual is empty without the relationship. Although that being said, the ritual is also essential to the relationship. My friend and I both had new jobs at the time. We had little kids. Our lives were full of other commitments. And if we hadn't set a prescribed time and place to meet, we wouldn't have met. Also, if our conversation hadn't followed a prescribed progression, our interaction always would have stayed at the level of small talk. Ritual is necessary for reinforcing important relationships. Why am I talking about this? Because for the next 11 weeks, our church will be studying worship. Many of us will be returning to in-person worship this coming Sunday. Many of us will continue to worship at home this week. And many of us have stopped worshiping altogether. Recent surveys have shown that 2/3 of Americans who profess to be Christians stopped all disciplines related to the Christian faith, including worship, during the pandemic. Now more than ever, we need to study worship because of how easy it is to fall out of the habit of worship and to lose sight of what worship is and why we do it. Worship is a set of rituals and habits. Worship follows a prescribed schedule, and worship follows a prescribed progression. It's a discipline that we adopt, that we shape our lives around. But worship is more than just a ritual. One of the reasons why people stopped worshiping during the pandemic, and you may be among them, is because the ritual changed. We found ourselves saying, I can't worship because I can't go to the church building. Or some went so far as to say the government is preventing me from worshiping. If worship is nothing but a ritual, it becomes empty and meaningless. But we fight to maintain that ritual, and if the ritual changes at all, we just feel like we can't worship. What the pandemic has done is not caused a problem for worship, but exposed a problem in worship, and that is we reduced the relationship to a ritual. The ritual of worship is meaningless without the relationship. Which relationship, you ask? Well, the most important relationship of all, and that is our saving relationship with Jesus Christ. Now, in response, you might say, if it's a relationship, why do we even need rituals? And the answer to that question is simple. Every relationship needs rituals. Rituals reinforce important relationships. In fact, rituals reinforce any important value. Our lives are busy. Our world is full of competing commitments. And if we don't build rituals around a relationship or a value, something else will crowd in to take its place. So ritual is essential to maintaining the relationship. So if you plan to resume in-person worship this week, ask yourself, have I been putting worship on hold? Have I been saying I can't worship until I can be in the church building? If this is the case, you may not be ready to come back to the church building because you may have reduced your relationship with Jesus to a ritual. Ask yourself, what habits, what disciplines can I incorporate into my life to cultivate and maintain an intimate relationship with Jesus on the other 6 days of the week during the times when I'm not sitting in the church building? If you plan to stay home, if you aren't ready yet to come back to in-person worship, ask yourself, what habits and practices will I adopt or will I continue to ensure that my relationship with Jesus continues to be the most important relationship in my life? Whether in person or at home, please tune in for the next 11 weeks. Get refreshed on what worship is and why it matters, and get reconnected to the heart of worship, the love and the lordship of Jesus Christ in every part of your life.